Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. Today is Wednesday. It is August, rather. It is August the 26th, and we're getting ready for Parshas Setze. So let me share with you. We've got some good sources this week that some of them were new to me. I think some of them might be new to you as well. And I think it'll be something that could really enhance everyone's week. I think what I'm just going to do in order to make sure there's no feedback, I'm going to mute everyone now, but at the end we'll make sure to open it up for all comments that anyone might have. Okay, so let's begin. So Parshas Setze has some fascinating sources. I'm very excited about some of them I saw for the first time this week, and I think there's going to be a great message in here for Elul as well, the month that we've all entered into. So let's start. Right at the beginning of the Parsha, we're told about a very enigmatic mitzvah, and it's something that our commentators have spent an incredible deal of time writing about, trying to understand, make sense of. There's a lot to be learned from it. According to some opinions in the Gemara, this never happened, it never could happen, but nonetheless the Torah teaches us about this in order that we should learn lessons from it. And that is the mitzvah of the Ben Sorer Umoreh, the rebellious wayward son. So let's read. There are 4 psukim we want to read about him, and then we'll get into some commentary. The pasuk says, we're in chapter 21, that's Perek Chaf Aleph. So the pasuk Yud Ches, verse 18 says, Ki ele ish ben sorer umoreh. If a person has a son who's wayward, rebellious son, that's how it's translated. This child does not listen to the voice of his father and mother. They've warned him, they've rebuked him, and the child does not clean up his act. Yud Tes 19. Now again, and the commentaries go on to explain there's a lot that this kid has to do wrong. This is not a kid who just didn't do his homework or eat his broccoli. So 19, Yud Tes. V'safshu bo avi v'imo. His father and mother should take hold of him. V'otziu oso el ziknei yiro. They bring him out to the elders of the city. V'al shar mekomo. Into the gate of that place. Chaf 20. V'amru el ziknei yiro. And he says to the parents say to the elders of the city, V'neinu zeh sorer u'morer. This son of ours is wayward and rebellious. And then he does not listen to our voices. Zolel v'sovei. He is a glutton and a guzzler. We'll see Rashi will tell us a little bit what that means, that he's a glutton and a guzzler. Chaf Aleph 21. Urgamuhu kol anshei yiro ba'avanim v'meis. The entire city shall pelt him with stones and he will die. Uve'arta hara mikirbecha. And by doing this, you will clear out evil from your midst. And all of Israel will listen, and they will learn from this, and they will fear never to go down this route, never to do anything like to emulate this kid's behavior. Now again, the Gemara fills in a lot of blanks here. This is not a kid who just refused to do his homework or brush his teeth or wash behind his ears. This is a kid who's really, really causing major societal problems. And there are so many factors that would have to fit in before a child could really be held to the Torah standards of Ben Sorer Umoreh, that leads the Gemara to say that this never happened and it never can happen just because it's just too hard to fulfill all of the Torah's requirements. Putting that aside, the Gemara says, so if it never can happen, why was it recorded? So the Gemara says the reason why Ben Sorer Umoreh is recorded is that we should all learn from it. There are important lessons to be learned from it. All right, so let's learn some lessons from this. So let's see Rashi. Rashi here is quoting the Gemara in Sanhedrin. That's where you'll find most of the information, all the Torah Shabbal Peh, all the oral traditions that pertain to the Ben Sorer Umoreh. You'll find it in the Gemara Sanhedrin. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says as follows. We're on page 1, midway down. The Yisruo son, the parents rebuke him. Matirin bo b'fnei shlosha. They've got to, first of all, rebuke him publicly in front of 3. Umalkin or so. And then the child has to receive malchus, has to receive lashes. It doesn't just accelerate, immediately go to getting stoned. There's a process here. So first there has to be a warning, there has to be rebuke in front of witnesses, and then there has to be lashes. Now the Gemara that Rashi's quoting tells us what's the ultimate philosophy behind this. Ben Sorer Umoreh eno chayav this child who's the rebellious wayward child does not incur the Torah's penalty ad sheyignov, until he steals v'yochal and eats tartimar basar, a tartimar of meat. What is a tartimar? So the English translated is a weight equal to half a maneh. So that was a biblical volume of meat. The yishten, he also has to steal and then drink chatzi log yayin, half a log. At that same meal, he has to drink a half a log of wine. Again, that's a pretty large volume of wine. Shenemar, how do I know that this child has to be consuming meat and wine? The pasuk says about him, what does the verse say about him? Zolel v'sovei, that this kid is a glutton and a guzzler. What do we know about gluttons and guzzlers? What we know from Mishlei, from another pasuk, a verse in Proverbs, where Shlomo Melech wrote, Alti b'sovei yayin, do not be amongst those who guzzle wine, b'zolele basar lamo, or amongst those who are gluttonous eaters of meat. So if the Torah says that this kid is zolel v'sovei, where else in Tanakh do I see those words used? Zolel refers to someone who is gluttonous when it comes to meat, and sovei is someone who's a guzzler when it comes to wine. So that's how the Gemara darshans that when it says here that this kid was zolel v'sovei, means that he was a thief, he was stealing, and he was using that money to purchase fine wine, a big amounts of wine and big amounts of meat to go ahead and eat. Rashi continues quoting the Gemara, that what's the logic? Why is this child being put to death? This wayward son is being killed because we know how the story is going to end. The Torah penetrates what his ultimate intentions are. Eventually, he's going to run out of his father's money. He's been stealing from his dad until now. Eventually, his parents are going to get wise. They're going to hide the cookie jar. They're going to hide wherever they stash their money. He's not going to be able to steal from his parents. But he's become addicted to this fine wine. He's become addicted to meat that he wants to throw on the barbecue. How's he going to make his habit work? So it says, but he still needs to fill his needs. The kid's been stealing from his parents, and he's been accustoming himself to guzzle wine and to be a glutton of meat. So how's he going to make his habit? How's he going to supply himself? So it says, he's looking to fill his needs, and he can't find it. So he's going to stand at crossroads, and he's going to rob people. He's going to become a highway bandit. And then he's eventually going to kill people when they put up a fight for their belongings. So Amra Torah, so the Torah says, Yamo Zakai, let's put the child to death now before he goes down that road, before he causes this incredible menace to society, becomes this menace to society, Val Yamos Chayev. And let's not let him die as a Chayev, as someone who has committed all those heinous crimes, because that'll be worse for him and his soul in the long run. It'll also be worse for society if these crimes are committed. So there's a very wild concept here, that this Ben Sora Mara, again, which the Gemara tells us that because it's so difficult to meet all the technicalities, case might never ever be able to happen. But nonetheless, we're supposed to learn from it. And what are we learning from it? Is that this child is being Nerag al Shem Sofo. This child is being put to death now, even though he has not committed a capital crime, because we know where this is going. We know how the story is going to end. This child has become an addict. He's become an addict to the wine and to this big amounts of meat. He's going to run out of his parents' money. He's going to have to start stealing. He's going to become Jesse James. He's going to become a highway bandit, a stagecoach robber. He's going to start killing people who put up a fight for their belongings. So therefore, the Torah says, let's knock him off now. Let's get him to exit the stage now before he does this massive damage to society. Again, that's what the Torah tells us about this Ben Sora Umara. And again, as we said a couple times already, the Gemara says that this probably could never happen because there are so many restrictions that have to be met in order to qualify for this punishment. That's what Rashi tells us, quoting the Gemara. And I've known this, I think many of you have known this from previous years. But what's amazing is this year when I was looking at this Rashi, I saw that some of the Mefarshe Rashi, some of the commentaries on Rashi, ask an extremely powerful question that I can't believe I never was bothered by beforehand. And that's what's so beautiful about learning Torah, is because just when you think we've known something, just when we think we've already seen the material, we look at it and we see someone ask something like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that before? And that's what we're going to see here. So the first commentary on Rashi we're going to look at is from Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi. Mizrahi was one of the early commentaries on Rashi. And he's going on this Rashi, and he says as follows. B'yesh l'tmoam, on the top of page 2. Here's the question that needs to be raised. Imenu ne'harag al shem sofo, if the whole rationale behind the Ben Sora Mora being put to death is that he's being killed based on where this is all going to lead and what he's going to do at the end, well, what is he going to do at the end? Sofo l'laste masabrios laharga. He's going to become a highway bandit. He's going to become a robber, and he'll kill people in order to rob them. So if that's the case, lama gazra Torah lios misaso beskila. So then why is he being put to death now with skila, by being stoned? If he were allowed to live and he would actually commit those crimes and he becomes a murderer, ein misaso ela b'sayef. The death penalty that he would incur is death by sword. V'onsho shel yamuzakai hushate misaso b'skila. But now we're saying that this guy being put to death early is being put to death by stoning. Chia yoser chamura sheba misos, which is the most severe form of capital punishment. Let's speak out this question. What the Mizrahi is bothered by is as follows. Beis Din was granted 4 methods of execution. There is skila, which is stoning. There is sreifa, which is by burning. There is chenek, which is strangulation. And there is hereg, which means by sword, that someone was beheaded like a guillotine, but it was with a sword. So of those 4, how is a murderer killed? Someone who kills other human being, someone who's a murderer. How does Beis Din kill such a person? The cherev, with a sword. They don't kill him by skila. They don't kill him by stoning. Stoning is seen as being the most brutal form of, because it's not the quickest, it's seen as being the most brutal form of execution, skila, being stoned to death. So the question is, why is this Ben Sora Mora being stoned? If the whole reason why we're executing him in the first place is because we see how the story's going to end, so execute him according to how the story should end. If we're nervous this fellow's going to become a murderer, so execute him like how a murderer is supposed to be killed, which is with a sword. He should be beheaded. Why are we executing him with skila? Skila is the most severe form of execution. And if the whole logic for killing him now before he's done a capital crime is because we know the capital crime he's going to commit, we're confident he's going to do this because he's addicted now. So kill him according to the way a murderer should be killed, which is with a sword. Why are we killing him with skila? It's an awesome question. I never stopped and thought about this before. It's an awesome question. So let's see what the Mizrahi is going to give us 2 answers to it. Let's first see his first answer. So I'll show you where I am with the cursor. It's the second line from the end of the first paragraph, Vishema. So he says, his first answer, he says, I've got a theory. He goes, Vishema yesh lomar, perhaps you can answer it as follows. The high malastim habrios, when we say that he's going to rob people to steal their money and then he's going to end up killing them, stama de ka'amarhu, it's saying it across the board, that this person, he's such an addict, he's going to rob people and kill them for their money every day of the week. Afilu b'Shabbos. That means he's even going to kill people on Shabbos. And what's the penalty for murdering on Shabbos? Shemisaso b'skila. Normally, if someone murders, their death penalty that they would incur would be death by sword. But if someone murders on Shabbos, now it's not just murder, it's murder and chilul Shabbos, because one of the ways of profaning Shabbos is by netilas neshama, taking a soul. Killing someone or killing an animal would also be a form of chilul Shabbos. So the first answer of the Mizrahi is as follows. You're right. A standard murderer, his execution is with a sword, with cherev. But this fellow, we're so confident that he's going to be malastim esabrios, he's going to be a highway bandit, murdering people for their money. He's going to do that every day of the week. He'll even do it on Shabbos. And therefore, we're going to kill him with skila because we know, we're confident that that's where he's heading. That's what the Mizrahi answers with that first answer. I want to share with you, we're going to come back to the Mizrahi's second answer in a minute, but look at the Sifsei Chachamim. This is another commentary on Rashi. He says the very same thing as what the Mizrahi said. He just speaks it out a little more. So that's the next commentary. Sifsei Chachamim says, so here you see, V'im Tamar, here's the question. The lama nidon baskila. Why is the Ben Sora Mora being put to death by stoning? He chamura. That's the most brutal form of execution. Harotseach b'sayafu. A murderer is supposed to be killed by the sword, a quick, swift hit with the sword. That's how a murderer is supposed to be executed by Beis Din. And the whole reason why we're killing the Ben Sora Mora is so we're confident that he's going to be a murderer. So if we're confident he's going to be a murderer, that's why we're executing him. Let's give him a murderer's execution. Why are we killing him by stoning? Right? Same question as what the Sifsei Chachamim asked. So let's see what the same question as what the Mizrahi asked, rather. So let's see, how does the Sifsei Chachamim answer it? Pretty much the same answer as what the first answer to Mizrahi. Yesh Lomar, here's how we answer it. Because this guy's an addict, he's going to have to murder and rob people. There's times he's going to do it on Shabbos. We're confident to do that on Shabbos too. V'horgan, and he's going to kill them. Nimsa, so what does it come out? Shemachal Shabbos. That aside from just being a murderer, he's also someone who's desecrating the Shabbos. V'chayev b'skila, and therefore he's going to be obligated skila mishum netilas neshama, because he took a soul. So that's why he's being stoned to death. So this answer to Sifsei Chachamim is exactly like the first answer of the Mizrahi. And I want to pause because I want to analyze this answer. I was doing some thinking about it, and all of a sudden something hit me. There's a very novel idea here. First of all, it's an incredible question, and it's a powerful answer. But then when we stop and think about it, I thought to myself as follows. One second. Why does the Mizrahi, why does the Sifsei Chachamim, why do they need to come up with this answer? They have to say, oh, you know what? This guy's a murderer, and l'chora, we can assume he's going to also kill on Shabbos. Why don't I have a simple answer? You know what my simple answer would be? This guy is going down the wrong path in life. He's stealing. We're sure he's going to be a murderer. I'm also sure the guy's going to get in his car and he's going to drive on Shabbos. If he's already doing these averos, if he's already going to steal, if he's already going to murder, I have no doubt he's going to light a fire on Shabbos. I have no doubt that he'll find a way to be Mechalel Shabbos. Why are we trying so hard to say he's going to be a murderer, but he'll also murder on Shabbos? Who needs that? Just say, the guy's going to be a Mechalel Shabbos. If he's already a robber, if he's already a thief, he's already a bandit, he's already ready to kill someone, he'll be a Mechalel Shabbos. So why he's being executed with skila, we're confident this guy's going to be a Mechalel Shabbos. Why don't we answer that? And I think the answer is obvious. I think the answer is obvious is we have no right to say that about another Jew. We have no right to say about a Jew that just because he's shown that he's a Rasha in one regard, then I can also say with certainty he'll be a Mechal Shabbos. He might be a thief. He might be a murderer. Whoa, are you so confident he's going to be Mechal Shabbos? You know what I am confident to say is once he's addicted, he's engaged in this addictive behavior, he needs the wine, he needs the meat, I know he's going to continue to steal and he'll murder. So I have to find a way that how will murder incur the death penalty of skila? The only way to say that is that he'll also murder on Shabbos. But independent of that, I cannot say he's going to be a Mechal Shabbos. What gives me the right to say with certainty, just because he steals and just because he murders, that he's also going to light fires on Shabbos? Whoa! You can't say that about another Jew. In my mind, that's a big chiddush. That's a big novel concept there. What we're saying is that we cannot jump to conclusions about any Jew, even if they've done some pretty rotten things in their lives, even if they've engaged in murder, they've engaged in thievery, whatever it is, we cannot start making assumptions. Okay, yeah, they'll also be a Mechal Shabbos. We don't know about that. Shabbos is a big deal. What I can say is the guy will continue to steal and murder to feed his addiction, and that'll happen on Shabbos, so he'll murder on Shabbos. That I can say. But just off the bat to say, okay, the guy in Mustama, he'll find a way to be a Mechal Shabbos some other way, that we have no authority to say such a thing. That's what the first answer of the Mizrahi and the Sifsei Chachamim seem to be implying, because they're saying the only way how we can find that this guy will be chayiv skila, will be obligated to be put to death by stoning, is we have to find a way within his behavior of robbing and stealing and killing. How could that incur chayiv skila, the penalty of skila, of stoning? Must be he's going to also do that on Shabbos. That's how we do it. But we don't.
Rabbi?
We don't just say, okay, the guy's going to also be a Mechal Shabbos. We can never assume that about anyone. Yeah.
Rabbi, it seems like your question about how can we not say this about any Jew, you should have asked that question, after he's already stolen from his father and now he's going to steal. In other words, if you say that we can't say that he's going to be Mechalel Shabbos as if that is the worst thing we could say about him, your question should have been asked, like many stages before he gets to this stage.
No. I'm not saying that Shabbos is the worst thing we could say about him. I'm saying is that we cannot say about any Jew, just say we're confident they're going to violate any other Avera other than what they've gotten themselves into an addictive
Right,
behavior.
but that's the whole point of this entire discussion, is that we are saying that he's...
But we're limiting it. What I'm pointing out is we're limiting it. It's limited to, he has gotten himself addicted to that wine and to that meat. He'll do whatever he can to fill his habit, which is going to involve stealing and it'll involve killing. But we do not know, okay, he's going to also wear shatnez. How can we say that about this guy? What indication do we have that this guy's going to wear shatnez? What indication do I have the guy's going to do Aver Min Achai, start ripping a polka off a chicken without killing it first? I don't know that. All I know is the guy's going to do whatever it takes to feed his addiction, which is going to involve thievery and perhaps murder. But I can't just assume that once he's already thrown in the towel on living a life of crime, that every other Avera it's a free-for-all too. We can't assume that about people. What we can assume is that once they've gotten themselves into this addictive mindset, they'll continue to engage in thievery and even murder to meet their habit. But we can't assume that once they've done that, then all mitzvahs are out the window. Now the guy's going to stop wearing tefillin. That's what it seems to be saying. In other words, it sounds like the only thing we can say with confidence is that he'll continue to do whatever it takes to get that meat and get that wine. To me, that was like a big chiddush, because a lot of times what we'll say about someone is once they've already shown their proclivity for one Avera, we just assume that they threw in the towel. That's it. They're done. They're not doing all 613 anymore. They threw it all away. And what this seems to be saying is, no, we're not going to say that about any Jew. We're not going to say that they've thrown in the towel and that they've thrown it all away. The only thing we could say with confidence is that they'll continue down this addictive, whatever path, whatever means necessary to meet that addictive behavior. That's the only thing. But
he could not steal. Maybe he meets a drunken woman and she pays for everything. We can't say for confidence that he's going to steal.
Yeah, but what
for the rest of his life?
There's no punishment. There's no punishment for that. In other words, we're looking we got to get this guy off the stage. He's going to cause massive damage to the world and to society. So the Torah says we got to get him to exit the stage now. Well, we have to look for what right do we have to kill him? We can only kill someone if they're going to commit a capital crime. What capital crime is out there for this guy? The only thing we can say with confidence is that they're going to continue to kill. Okay, if they're going to continue to kill, then he should be put to death with the sword. Why is he being put to death by stoning? The answer is because he's going to continue to kill on Shabbos. When killing on Shabbos, we'll meet that. So my question was, well, who needed that? Just say, you know why he's going to get stoning? Because we'll assume he's going to be a Mechal Shabbos. Once the guy already is thrown away, he doesn't care about stealing. He doesn't care about killing. He probably also doesn't care about making a bonfire on Shabbos. So it looks like the answer is we have no right to say that. I don't know. I don't know what's going to be. A Mechal Shabbos gets stoned. Someone who violates Shabbos gets stoned. I don't have a right to say that just because this guy is engaging in this heinous behavior, he's also going to be Mechal Shabbos. The only way I have a right to say that is if I say, because he's going to murder on Shabbos to meet his habit. That's the only thing that gives me the right to say that. I think that's just telling us, don't ever write another Jew off. Even if I know they're up to rotten behavior, don't ever assume just because they crossed this bridge, that they've thrown it all away. We can't assume that about anybody.
Rabbi, can I ask something at this point?
Sure.
Okay, so this presumes, going back to the pasuk,
yeah.
This presumes that tshuva can't possibly enter into this man's life. Do we have a right to assume that? Do we say maybe we should wait till after Yom Kippur and see what God has in mind for him? Do you understand?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. And some of our commentators deal with this, and what they seem to be implying is that once this guy gets involved in this addictive behavior, it sounds like it.
Right. Logically speaking, one would assume.
Right, that they're going down this road, and
right.
It's just a matter of time till they start being this incredible.
Yeah, I understand that, but it just bothers my notion of teshuva.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It sounds like, again, had these crimes that he was committing been between him and God, God could say, I'm willing to give him a longer run because he'll do tshuva.
Yeah.
This is a murderer, and we're so confident he's going to be a murderer. We've got to get off the stage. That's what it sounds like. We can't give him time for tshuva. It might, but I'm saying in the meantime, there's going to be a body count. We can't have that there. That's what it seems to be saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it. I want to share with you a second answer that the Mizrahi gives. The first answer we shared, but now let's see the second answer. Second answer, you see where I have the cursor. It's in the middle of the line by the end of the first paragraph. Inami, here's the second answer. Umalaste mesabrios, when it says that this guy's eventually going to be this menace to society, he's going to be a bandit, a robber, the Kamar, when the Pasuk says that, Lav dafka, it doesn't just mean that he's going to rob and steal. Elohu adinami, what it also means is shi'avor averos sheyesh ben misa skila sreifachedek. He's going to, another way to learn this is, this guy is going to violate every prohibition in the book. That is going to carry every one of the death penalties. So if he's going to violate averos that are going to carry every one of the death penalties, when we're going to execute him, we're going to give him the worst one because we're confident he's going to do those too. Teda, how do I prove this? Da mismichos aparshios. Look at the next pasuk. The next pasuk, we'll see it in a second, says that if a person it's done something wrong that they're supposed to be executed by the court, that follows immediately this whole story of Ben Soramora in Parshas Ben Soramora. That immediately follows Ben Soramora, Hakodemis law, which preceded it. Darshu Rabbeinu Zal, and our sages extrapolate from the fact that these follow one another. Magi, this teaches us Shimchasim Alav Avivimo, that if the father and mother of the Ben Soramora, if they decide to have mercy on him and not bring him to Beis Din, so if Sheyetze Latar B'Sra, eventually he's going to get caught up with all the worst of society. Yavor Averos, he'll violate every Avera in the book. He's Chayav Misa Beis Din, and he will be eventually be guilty and incur the death penalty. Nainu skila, which means being stoned, dumi dahacha, just like this. Let's just see the psukim and you'll see what he's answering. The next pasuk, I've got it here. It's the next pasuk Chabez. It says v'chia ish be'ish chet mishpat maves v'humas v'taliso sa'aleitz. If someone was supposed to be killed in Beis Din and he has been put to death and now he's been hung on a tree. So then the next pasuk goes on that we're not supposed to let him hang until nightfall. He's supposed to be hung just for a very short amount of time to be like a public, as a public warning to everybody, and then he's supposed to be taken down and buried. Let's see what Rashi says about this pasuk. Rashi says, so Rashi, this is what the Mizrahi was quoting. Smichus aparshios magid. Why does this follow right after the Ben Soramora? The reason why the juxtaposition is this way is to teach us Shim Chasim Alav Avivimo, that if his mother and father have mercy on him and don't want to turn him into Beis Din, Sof Sheyetze Latar B'Sra, eventually he'll get caught up with the worst of society. Yavor Averos, he'll commit all the grave sins. Yischayev Misa Beis Din, and he will be obligated to be killed in Beis Din. One more Rashi, V'Taliso Salaetz. He's supposed to be strung up. He's supposed to be hung up. Again, Beis Din doesn't kill anybody by hanging. After the person was dead, then they would hang the person to be a public, to be that society should learn from this mistake. The Taliso Salaetz, Rabbeinu Amru, the sages learn, Kola Niskalin Nitlin. Anyone who was put to death by skila, by stoning, was supposed to be hung. Shenamar, because it said, Ki Kilalas Elokim Taloi, is that it's a blasphemous to God if a body is left hanging too long. Someone who blasphemes, someone who, it's a euphemism, not someone who blesses God, but someone who curses God is supposed to receive the death penalty of skila. So what Rashi is saying, explaining this pasuk is that if parents decide not to turn their kid into Beis Din, this kid's eventually going to commit terrible averos, and the kid's going to eventually need to be put to death by Beis Din. In which manner? Stoning. And how do I know that? Because that's where the whole issue comes up about hanging the corpse on a tree. It was the one who was put to death by stoning that gets hanged on the tree. So what the Sisach HaChamim is answering in his second answer is, you know why this guy is being put to death by stoning? You're right. We know that this guy's going to become a murderer. But he's also going to do all sorts of other things wrong. And those other crimes will carry a penalty of stoning. He might become a blasphemer. He might become an idol worshiper, whatever they are. And he might become a Shabbos desecrator. But whatever they are, he's going to eventually be stoned, so therefore stone him now. Very different answer than the first answer. What we were talking about before was all built on the first answer, that the first answer was they were trying so hard to say that the only thing we know that confidently he's going to do wrong is to steal and to murder. How do we say that he's going to do that and it's a skila? So he says, okay, he did it on Shabbos. Implication being, we have no right to assume that he would do something else that would be skila. The second answer of the Mizrahi is that, yeah, maybe we could assume that. So the second answer is a very different approach to it. So what we were saying before was just in the first answer or in the Sisei Chachamim. Okay, I want to share with you something a little bit later in the Parsha. A little bit later in the Parsha, we find as follows. The next chapter, it says, Lo sires chamor, it's chapter 22, that's Chav Beis. It says, Lo sires chamor achicha o sharo noflim baderech. You should not see your brother's donkey or ox falling under its load on the road. Be salamta mehem, and just ignore them. So here's this animal, Nebuch, it's got this huge pack of stuff on its back. It's hauling to the market. And then I say, I don't want to get involved, so I'm just going to turn my head, ignore it. Rather, hakem takim imo, you should pick up the load with him. You help him out. So Rashi says, hakem takim zo te'ina. This is the obligation of te'ina, which means loading up the burden. Means what? Latin masoy shenafam elav. To help the person load up the stuff that has fallen from it. That's what I should do. Then the Rashi adds in parentheses, as opposed to prika. The other term is prika. Prika means to unload a burden too heavy. And that's something we'll see that comes up in Shemos. So there's two responsibilities I have. One is te'ina, which means that, again, that's to load, to help load. If let's say something fell off the animal, it's stumbling, so I want to help load it back up. And then there's prika, if it's got too much on its back, I want to help unload it. But here we're only dealing with te'ina. So let's see one more Rashi, imo. So it says, hakem takim imo. So what did the pasuk say? Rather, you shall pick up the load with him. It specifically says, I'm working together with the owner of the animal. Im ba'alav, with its owner. In other words, the owner is there trying to reload the animal, so I should help the owner. Avalim halach v'yashav lo. But let's say the owner went away. The owner says, I don't care. V'amar, and he says to me, because he sees me walking back, hol v'alecha mitzvah. He says, the mitzvah's on you. The Torah says, lo tiratz chamor achicha sharod noflim baderech v'salantaman. So the guy is just sitting there taking a lunch break, and he says, males, you see my donkey, it's struggling under that load? Get involved, because the Torah says you're not allowed to ignore it. And I say, why aren't you helping? He says, it's my lunch break. So what's my responsibility at that time? So he says, the guy says to me, it's males, it's your commandment. Get up there and help. So what's my obligation there? I'm pater. I only have to help if it's imo. If the owner of the animal is making an effort to try to help, then I have to help him. But if that guy is totally washed his hands in a situation and he says, it's all on you, males, you're the one who's got to do it because you care about the mitzvahs. I don't care. So then it's not my responsibility. I only have a mitzvah to help if it's imo. Look at the Ibn Ezra there. This is one of our classic commentators. He says on it right here, hakem takim imo. He says, help him out. He says, v'lo levadcha. You do not have the responsibility to do it all by yourself. Only if the owner is doing it, then do I have to help him. But I do not have the responsibility to do it all by my lonesome. Lo levadcha, and kemo, he says, this is just like earlier in Shemos, where it says, azov tazov imo, where it talks about prika, where it talks about unloading. There the Torah clearly says, azov tazov imo, you only help him if he's helping involved. So too here, when it comes to te'ina, loading up, I only help if he's doing it. So again, there are two cases. There's helping to reload a donkey, that's this week's Parsha, and there's also a case of unloading, which is in Shmos, in Mishpatim. We'll see that in a second. In both of those cases, Rashi and Ibn Ezra are telling us, in both of those cases, I only have an obligation to help. If I'm there to assist, I'm going to be a second set of hands. But to do it all by my lonesome, that I have no obligation for. That's not fair of the owner to put the burden and to put the responsibility totally on me. That's not fair. I do not have that responsibility. That's what the commentaries tell us. Let's see Shmos 23, because that's what they referred to when they talked about Azov Tazov Imo. I want to show you a beautiful piece from the Kli Yakar there, but it applies here as well, because again, these are both linked. Whether it's loading a donkey or unloading the donkey, as a bystander, my only obligation to get involved is if the owner is already involved. If that guy wants to just ignore it and put it all on me, I don't have to. So look, what was it in Shmos 23? If I see my enemy's donkey lying under its burden, and they say, certainly this is for my friend, it's a chiddush that even if it's my enemy, I gotta get involved. And then I should refrain from helping? No, azov tazov imo. I should surely get involved and help along with him. But again, what's it saying? This is talking about unloading. It's under too much weight, so I got to help unload it. I only get involved if the owner is already doing. Imo means with him, but not single-handedly. So look at the Kli Yakar. This is a beautiful idea that Kli Yakar says over there, and it applies in our case just as much. So I'm going to just scroll down. Do I think I'm allowed to not get involved? No. Azov tazov imo. Lo mar lacha. Why did the Torah use this word imo to teach us? Davka sherotza lios imcho b'malachta. Only if the guy is asking me to help him out, be a second set of hands, only then do I have to get involved. Or imach. Only then, if the guy is telling me, please give me a hand, let's do this together, only then do I have to get involved. Then I have to get involved to help. In other words, if he's already doing something to help himself, to help his belongings, only then do I have to get in help. Avolim Yoshev lo, but if that guy's sitting there on a siesta, Vomer, and he says, Hoel v'alecha mutala davar, since the mitzvah is on you, chayavat alakim levad, therefore you should do it all by yourself. If that's what the guy wants to say to me, I say, go fly a kite. Al kain amar v'chadalta me'azov lo. That's why the Torah says that, no, there are times where I don't have to get involved. Ki milas lo, ein b'mashmas imo, the Torah is saying, if the guy's trying to put it all on me, the owner of the animal says, I'm going to sit by, and now males, you're the one who cares about Torah and mitzvahs, so you unload or you reload my animal, then I'm allowed to say, I'm not getting involved. When am I allowed to walk away? If the owner wants to be negligent and says, males, all the work is on you, I'm not getting involved, then I can walk away. Look what he writes now. And based on this is an answer to some of the aniyim, some of those who are in poverty, who are members of our people. They throw themselves on the public, that it's the public's responsibility to take care of them. And they don't want to do anything to help themselves. Even if they have the capability to do something, and they say, no, I'd rather totally sit it out and put it on society to take care of me, or any other way. If that's someone's attitude, if someone has some means to help themselves and they refuse, they say, I'm not going to lift a finger to help myself. I'm going to put it all on society. And they just curse society if society doesn't help them and give them all their needs. So he says, God never commanded society to take care of a person who conducts themselves in such a fashion. What does the Torah say? Here when it's talking about unloading an animal, it says, azov tazov imo, help along with him, meaning the owner's already doing something, so now step in to help. Or hakim takim imo, that's in our parsha. Or if he needs help reloading the animal, he's already doing it, now I help. But if they're not doing anything for themselves, it's not fair to turn to society and say society has to take care of me. The one who's in a state of poverty, he or she has to do everything they can for themselves. If at the best of their efforts they're not able to help themselves, then the rest of the community has to try to help and get involved and help them meet their needs. Whatever they're lacking. Even if it takes 100 times to help, then we have an obligation to do. But if the person is not making any effort for themselves, if the person is not doing anything to try to help themselves, it's not fair to say now it's society's problem. We are responsible as individuals, and it's our individual responsibility to try to do what we can for ourselves. If we're not able, and we've done what we can, and we can't do any more, then we can turn to society. But it's not fair for me to say, because I want to, I don't want to work. I don't want to work up a sweat. So now society has to take care of me. Only after I've tried to do my part could I then ask others for help. That's what the Kli Yakar is saying, the vital lesson from this parsha, what it says about reloading an animal, and back in Mishpatim, when it talks about unloading an animal, that's what it says a vital lesson is. I want to share with you what the Chafetz Chaim says. The Chafetz Chaim says, this is not just true, we don't have time to do it inside, so let me share with you outside. The Chafetz Chaim on this week's parsha, he says this is not just true when it comes to loading and unloading donkeys, or to any of our material concerns. He says this is also true of our spiritual affairs. He says our tefillos, if you look at our prayers, they're full of requests from God, saying, God, I want to be a better Jew. God, lighten up my eyes so I can understand your Torah. I can ask till I'm blue in the face, but God's going to say to me, have you done your part? I'm happy to help you. Males, I'm happy to help. You're asking for success in Torah learning? I'll help. I'll step in and help. But you've got to first act. You've got to do your part first. It's not just when it comes to mundane matters like loading and unloading donkeys do we say that the owner has to show some responsibility and accountability. When it comes to spiritual pursuits as well, we have to turn to God and say, God, I'm asking for this. I'm asking for siyata deshmaya. I'm asking for your heavenly assistance. But that very term, heavenly assistance, implies I'm making some efforts on my own. If I'm making efforts, then I can ask God to step in and say, help me accomplish what I want to achieve. But if I'm not doing anything in that regard and I'm putting it all on God, that's not fair. God's going to say, I'm not obligated to get involved. So this very lesson that we learn from loading and unloading donkeys and oxen, the Chafetz Chaim is saying this applies to our spiritual pursuits. And this is something we have to remember. I could daven and I can ask God for his assistance, but I'm only in a place where I can ask God if I can answer this question. Have I put in any effort of my own? Have I put any effort? I can ask all I want, yeah, light up my eyes, help me understand the Torah. But it's not going to come, it's not going to be a magic pill. If I'm making efforts, God will give me siyata deshmaya. And once I put in my hishtadlus, I put in my efforts, then God could help me. But if I don't put in my efforts, then where do I get off asking God to just get a complete gift? It doesn't work that way. That's what the Chafetz Chaim extends this. The lesson from loading and unloading donkeys, that's how he extends it. I want to end by sharing with you one incredible idea. This is something that's in the Medrash Shir HaShirim Rabbah. The Medrash to Shir HaShirim has a beautiful passage. I'm sure you've seen it quoted before. I know I have, and this week I wanted to look it up because I think this is so important. It can get overwhelming because we say, oh my gosh, the same way, I'm able to ask my neighbor for a hand, loading and unloading, but I got to be doing something first. I could turn to God and ask God for his help in a project, but I got to do my part first. But how much do I have to do? And so look what the Medrash says. The Medrash says, I'm on the first line, a little bit into it. Rabbi Yesa Amar, Rabbi Yesa, that's not a common name, but again it says Rabbi Yesa Amar, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says Li Yisrael to the Jewish people, Banai, my children, Pischu li Pesach Echad. He says, open for me an opening, Shal Tshuva, of return, Kichuda Shal Machat, that's as small as the point of a needle. That's all I'm asking you, Bnei Yisrael. Make that starting effort. Open a hole that's the size of a needle point. Va'ani poseach lachem psachim, and I will enlarge that opening to be so great, shiu agalos ukarnios nichnasim bo, that complete wagon trains could drive through it. God, when he says you got to do your share and then I'll do my part, it's not a 50-50. It's not, God's not saying that we got to be doing this equally, because God understands he's got far more powers than we do. And there are times that we are so incredibly weak and beaten that we feel we just can't put in the complete effort. What this Medrash is telling us is that even if we put in a minimal effort, then we could turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, I've started the process. Please, grant me siyata deshmaya, grant me some of your heavenly assistance so I can see some success. That's what he's teaching us here. And I think this is so important as we're in the month of Elul. We know it's the month of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. We know that throughout the year, tshuva, return, reestablishing our relationship with God, that's something that works the entire year. Yet our sages tell us that there's no point in the year that's more appropriate or more potent for the power of tshuva than right now. This is the point of the year when Hashem is on his bending over, asking us, return, just make that first effort, make that first motion, and then I'll reciprocate. This is when he's almost begging us to start the process. And what the Medrash is telling us, starting the process can be as little as making a hole the size of a pinhead. Once we start the process, we can start asking God for his assistance, and God guarantees us that he will open that hole so much greater for entire wagon trains to go through, something which only began as the point of a needle. So I thought this is a beautiful idea. So just to wrap this all up, we started with the Ben Sura U'Morer, and we were looking to learn something from the Ben Sura U'Morer, and I think we did learn something. We learned from those two answers that the Mizrahi had, but I specifically wanted to hone in on the first one, that the first answer seems to imply that we can never make any assumption about any Jew, that just because they've gone down a dark path in some regard, that means they've thrown away all the Torah and mitzvahs. We can't say that. Okay, if they've started down this path of addiction, then we could say that looks pretty guaranteed, but we cannot say that therefore all the Torah and mitzvahs are gone. That's something we cannot do. And then we looked at this pasuk that was talking about reloading our friend's animal. And it told us that the only time I have an obligation is if it's imo, if it's a scenario in which the other person is putting in some effort, then I have an obligation to get involved. But you can't put it all on me. And we said that was also mishpatim when it talked about unloading an animal. And the Kli Yakar pointed out that that's not limited to loading and unloading animals. That also has to do with what is it fair for us to ask for communal support. I could ask for communal support if I've hit the brick wall. I've tried to do what I can and I can't go any further. And then the Chafetz Chaim took that and says beyond loading and unloading donkeys, beyond communal support, that also has to do with what we ask of God. When we ask Hashem for help, we have to ask ourselves a question first. Have I done my hishtadlus? Have I put in my effort? That's true when it comes to mundane matters, but it's also true about spiritual pursuits. If I'm asking God to help me with spiritual pursuits, I first had to have done my share. And then this final point from the Medrash that says, don't be intimidated. When we're asking God and we want to be in partnership, it's not emo, it's not a 50-50 partnership relationship. Even if we only do a minimal amount, we start the process. Kechut ha-machat. We said kechut ha-machat. We're putting it in like the eye, the hole that a needle can make. Only then, even if that's how we start the process, we can then ask Hashem to expand that hole, to make it so much larger that entire wagon trains could come on through. That's what we saw. One thing I see something came through on the chat. Someone was asking a question, is that why are these two mitzvahs in separate places for loading and unloading an animal? Why are they not both in the same parsha? Good question. I don't know off the bat. I'm sure somebody has to ask this. I just I can't say that I know that off the bat. But that's a good question. At this point, I'm going